Welcome back. I'm Peter St. Onge. This is a weekly roundup of my daily videos on the economy and freedom, where I cut through the BS and lay out what the gaslighting clowns pulled out of their hats this week and what is coming next. Is the decapitation of Iran about ending its nuclear program, or is it about China and the future of the dollar as reserve currency? In case you spent the weekend touching grass, Saturday morning Donald Trump bombed Iran, apparently wiping out the leadership who were helpfully having a giant staff meeting for their monthly TPS reports. Now, Trump hopes this sets off a scramble for power. Critics call it bomb and pray, with candidates including the deposed prince, a military junta, or low-echelon regime officials who might have very short life expectancies. But what happens in Iran does not stay in Iran, because of the millions of barrels of oil Iran was exporting, 90% of which was going to China, even higher than the 70% of Venezuela oil that was going to China. And none of it was being paid in U.S. dollars, since both Venezuela and Iran are sanctioned on the SWIFT dollar payment system. Now, this is raising questions whether Iran was actually a strategic strike against China, who's already reeling from a real estate crisis and massive overcapacity in manufacturing, which is exacerbated by Trump's trade war. The background is China has been one of the biggest beneficiaries of the Ukraine war, gobbling up Russian oil and gas that used to go to Europe and getting it at a fat discount since it is sanctioned. This turned Russia into China's biggest oil and gas provider, and China now buys nearly half of Russian oil, which is about double its pre-war share. China was doing the same with Iran and Venezuela, buying their sanctioned oil at a fat discount, essentially buying shoplifted groceries on the street instead of going into Walmart and paying like everybody else, which gave it a big cost advantage. For scale, 25% of China's pre-war oil imports came from Russia, Venezuela, and Iran. That's risen to 40%, of which half were Venezuela and Iran. Now, the last time America strangled oil on an Asian country, it led to Pearl Harbor. That was 1940s Japan, which was forced to either walk away from its China invasion or seize oil-rich European colonies. Today, the most likely outcome is China has to outbid the other half of Russian oil, most of which today is going to India, which also re-exports a hefty chunk black market to Europe. Almost all of this oil is by ship from the Arctic, since Ukraine bombed Russia's oil pipelines, meaning it is very easy to switch. So China loses its cheap oil, India and Europe will have to scramble for supply, perhaps they'll even buy American. There's a final D to the 3D chess saying Iran was not about mullahs, it was not about China, it was about the petrodollar. The idea that the U.S. punishes countries who don't price oil in dollars to defend the dollar as reserve currency, which allows $38 trillion in debt. There's an entire industry blaming U.S. wars on petrodollar defense. Essentially, when a regime stops pricing oil in dollars, his days are numbered. Trump knocking out the two biggest non-dollar oil exporters would be right on cue. So as next, in a single morning, Trump took away China's cheap oil. He may force India and Europe to buy American, and if the petrodollar was part of the deal, it means Trump's gone from wanting a weak dollar to promote exports to wanting a strong dollar to finance trillion-dollar federal deficits. The panic is, quote, off the charts at CNN as Trump-aligned Paramount Studios buys their parent company Warner Brothers. Where will Antifa get their fiery yet peaceful news? Last year, Trump-supporting billionaire Larry Ellison, who is friendly with Elon and also bought TikTok, gained control of Paramount Global, the number 4 studio in Hollywood and owner of television network CBS. He put his son in charge, who's been trying to turn CBS into the anti-woke network, and then launched a bid to buy the second largest studio, Warner Brothers. Now, Warner owns CNN, along with a bevy of cable channels, including Discovery, HBO, the Oprah Winfrey Network, and DC Studios, in case you prefer Batman to Girl Boss Hulk. The Warner takeover set off a 6-month dogfight with the Cathedral of Woke, Netflix, who finally gave up last week. The Democrats naturally are still trying to block Paramount with antitrust, But odds on Kalshi are currently 95% of the deal going through, so the fat lady pretty much sang. That means pretty much all the on-air talent at CNN is about to lose their job. As one insider put it, quote, "We are F." So this is another step in leveling the media playing field, but it's not as big as it looks because CNN is a shriveled husk of its former glory. Today's CNN has less audience than AI videos of raccoons opening trash cans. In just 2 years, CNN lost 58% of their 25 to 54 audience, which is what advertisers crave. The median CNN viewer is now almost 70. Digital subscriptions were supposed to save them, but that crashed, losing $11 billion. And it's not just CNN. Across all cable news, viewership is down almost half from pre-COVID. Hollywood box office is also down half. When is the last time you saw a movie? Newspapers are down nearly 70%, almost 3,000 have closed, which is almost half of all newspapers remaining in the country. If this were a patient, the doctor would have unplugged it and stolen its shoes. In short, all legacy media went woke, went broke, and now nobody listens to them. Especially the young. Just 1 in 10 of Gen Z watches cable news. 1 in 20 read a newspaper. They probably don't know how it works. Where is the on button? Of course, the audience did not vanish. In fact, Americans spend more time on a screen watching news, but they're doing it on social media like X, YouTube, and independent platforms. Joe Rogan pulls 11 million viewers per episode. That's 30 times CNN. Tucker and Alex Jones are not far behind. Free speech newsletter platform Substack has paid out $500 million to creators. So while a pro-Trump CNN will be surreal, it's also fighting the last war. Legacy media is already in hospice, and populists are winning the new media hands down. So what's next? CNN's down. MSNBC also got restructured for sale. That could leave 0 progressives on cable TV, which would be nice for the country. Alas, media is only half the battle for hearts and minds, given progressives have thoroughly captured education from public schools all the way to university, meaning 16 years of indoctrination that even a neutral media will struggle to reverse. So CNN is a tactical win, but there's miles to go to breaking the brainwash industrial complex. A word from our sponsor. If you own gold, and many of you do, you already understand how it protects your wealth from the insanity coming out of Washington. The inflation, the recessions, the wars. But with monetary metals, there's a way to actually earn a yield of up to 4% on your gold, paid in more ounces of gold. You retain ownership of real, allocated physical gold with no storage costs while your ounces grow every month outside the banking system. If you're serious about protecting your future and building your legacy, head to monetarymetals.com/Peter to get started. Now back to our show. The EPA just repealed a $1 trillion climate rule that could unleash a manufacturing renaissance, raising the prospect even sane people could make stuff in America again. It may come in very handy if the Iran war keeps energy costs high. Last week, Trump's EPA repealed Barack Obama's so-called greenhouse gas endangerment finding, which classified carbon dioxide as a pollutant. The repeal continued the pattern that every economic fix comes from Trump, while our allegedly pro-growth Congress sits on its butt. The Obama rule was always goofy. Carbon dioxide literally makes plants grow. It's what plants crave. Studies have found the entire Earth is turning green, including the edges of the Sahara. One study found we added an Amazon worth of forests in the past 25 years because humans are pumping plant food into the air. Note, we get the plant food by burning oil and gas, which are toxic. Stick your finger in petroleum, you'll get a rash. Keep it long enough and you'll get cancer. So fossil fuels turn toxic sludge into forests and crops. They are literally the cleanest industry imaginable. Still, classifying CO2 as a pollutant was necessary for the global warming totalitarians who want to reduce every human activity to a carbon footprint subject to government control. The repeal is the single largest deregulation in history, with the EPA estimating $1.3 trillion in direct savings, including $2,400 in savings for every new car, and the end of the dreaded auto stop feature. The world is healing. Note the rule of thumb in regulation is reduced growth is about 7 times higher than compliance costs, implying close to $300 billion per year in benefits, which is nearly $2,500 per year for a typical household. These fall into a couple buckets. First, lower energy and transportation costs, which reduce the price of everything. It also removes the so-called emission control equipment that hikes your electricity bill to scrub out that life-giving CO2, and mandates for green energy that hurt grid reliability. You get more blackouts, which is bad for business and for movie night with the kids. The second is jobs. The National Association of Manufacturers estimates regulatory costs literally cost more than salaries for small manufacturers. They push companies to China, which does not force you to scrub your carbon. Car jobs especially will benefit, which are a major push for Trump that's already happening because of tariffs. Jeep just moved a $13 billion factory from Canada to the Midwest. Every German car maker is now moving production to the U.S., mainly South Carolina, Alabama, and Tennessee. Repeal also guts the climate justice lawsuits that were just ramping up, could have led to hundreds of billions for trial lawyers, you pay, and higher prices and higher insurance. Finally, national security. Climate rules hollowed out the American mining industry, leaving us at the mercy of China from rare earths to lithium. Meanwhile, America is a superpower in coal, oil, and gas, but China is the superpower making windmills and solar panels, to the point China should be funding the global warming activists. So as expert, getting rid of the endangerment rule is a big step, but there's thousands more regulations straitjacketing American jobs from manufacturing and farming to healthcare and housing. Every one of them lovingly backed by lobbyist money, which is why Congress does not fix them no matter which party's in charge, leaving all the heavy lifting to Trump. AI is coming for Hollywood, with a recent viral video of Tom Cruise fighting Brad Pitt setting off alarm bells in Tinseltown that maybe we don't need the celebrities or the rest of them. Meanwhile, Reuters predicts H-1Bs face a, quote, AI job reckoning. The Spectator thinks AI will, quote, kill all the lawyers, metaphorically kill. Will AI keep going till the only jobs are blue collars? Raw numbers since the post-COVID peak, entertainment jobs, including journalists, are down 300,000. Entry-level IT is down 90,000. Lawyers sadly added jobs because regulations went up. So AI is interesting because it's the opposite of the Industrial Revolution, which devalued physical work in favor of white-collar work. It was the ultimate revenge of the nerds. This took journalists and professors from penniless scribblers to masters of the universe. AI, on the other hand, replaces white-collar work while increasing physical work. Since automation raises incomes, higher incomes consume more services, more trades, houses get bigger with swimming pools, and more creators, rich people buy handmade. Now, in theory, robots eventually come for all those service and trades jobs, but that takes decades because you can build one AI for 8 billion people, but you need 5 robots for every McDonald's. Now, it's worth noting AI job replacement has been much slower than predicted. 10 years ago, experts confidently hyperventilated that AI job losses by now would be between 40 million BCG to 75 million McKinsey to 85 million, according to the World Economic Forum. In fact, the World Economic Forum predicted half of all job tasks would be done by AI by now. In fact, you have to squint to see AI in the jobs data. Now, future jobs are being canceled. Amazon recently canceled 600,000 future warehouse jobs, and we're seeing an impact on young hires, especially those who have useless degrees. But we have not lost 75 million jobs. Still, we are seeing these pockets where AI can replace specific workers in Hollywood, H-1Bs, and lawyers. Now, in recent videos, I've talked about where the new jobs will come from. Some will be in new goods and services we have not yet imagined. A decade ago, there was no such thing as an app developer, Uber driver, or YouTuber hi mom. A lot more will be services like caregiving, so nurses, teachers, elder care, and normal people enjoying these services only rich people enjoy today, from personal trainers, pet groomers, personal chefs, and custom landscaping. Consider the 1950s, only the rich had pet groomers and babysitters. They called them nannies back then. Vending machines have not replaced bartenders. YouTube videos have not replaced personal trainers. Most people do not want a robot watching their kids. Finally, for the introverts, the skilled trades, building and maintaining all those second houses, home theaters, and swimming pools. So it's next. For thousands of years, automation creates more jobs than it takes. It raises income across society. That's why low automation Uganda is much poorer than Switzerland and has much fewer jobs. But when the AI smoke clears, it helps blue collars a lot more than white collars. This is disturbing for the journalists, consultants, and professors who write AI fear porn. They are terrified that the pet groomer or grocery cashier might out-earn them like the plumber already does. But given automation raises all boats, even the professors will be fine. They just won't be on top. A word from our sponsor. One of the best ways to secure your Bitcoin is with a hardware wallet, a physical device that lets you keep your coins offline without internet connection. One of the most trusted names in hardware wallets is CoinKite, maker of the famous block clock. CoinKite devices are made in Canada and they're run by passionate Bitcoiners who've been at this since 2012, back when Bitcoiners were trading in person at swap meets. You can pick up hardware wallets and plenty of other goodies at coinkite.com/ProfSaintAnge. That's CoinKite.com/ProfSaintAnge. Okay, back to our show. Will the Iran war send us into recession? Is Donald Trump's totally awesome 1980s boom headed for a 1970s quagmire? As soon as the bombs started falling over Tehran, American markets crashed, bonds fell, silver plunged, even gold is down. Oil, of course, jumped 10% in 2 days from $67 to $74 per barrel. Now, markets always react fast, and they can overreact. The question for the real economy is, how long does the war last? This is because the main impact is oil prices, and these are driven by supply disruptions in the Middle East. About 1/5 of world oil exports pass through Iran's Strait of Hormuz. Another third are in range of Iranian missiles in the Gulf of Oman and the Red Sea. Now, the U.S. actually imports almost none of this. Just 2% of our oil comes from the Middle East, but oil prices are global. Within 3 days, ship traffic in the Strait of Hormuz ground to a, quote, total halt. Trump responded with government guarantees on ship insurance, which helped, but traffic will not fully recover until the bombs stop. Now, Trump is currently promising the war will last just 4 weeks, but the administration is also messaging it will take, quote, as long as it takes. Now, you do this to demoralize the other guy, but it means this is not a one-night stand like Venezuela or last time Trump bombed Iran. Now, impact on the economy falls into 3 baskets: growth, jobs, and inflation. Taking each, historically, every $10 rise in oil knocks about 0.2% off economic growth. That's small for an economy that's currently growing at 3%. It lowers wage growth by maybe $200 per year. But it goes on top of expensive oil to heat your home or gas your car. So a $10 jump translates into about 25 cents a gallon of gas. Together with heating and trucking, it raises household costs another $300 a year, bumping inflation by maybe 0.33%. Oil and growth then both hit job creation. $10 might drop job creation by 10 to 15,000 per month. So it's painful, but it is not a recession. What would drive us into a recession is a long war. A recent study by Deutsche found that historic oil shocks need about a 50 to 100% ongoing jump in oil to set off a recession. That would imply oil prices of $100 to $150 that stay there. Currently, we're at around 75. But even then, oil only causes recession when you're already limping. So the 1970s are the poster child for an oil crash, but we were already in bad shape thanks to Washington dumping trillions into the welfare state in Vietnam, so-called guns and butter. In fact, the Nixon shock, when the system came apart, came before the oil embargo. In contrast, today we're growing at 3%. According to FedNow, productivity is soaring at 4.9%, which is one of the highest since the Reagan boom. So oil could knock us into the ones on growth, but even that will not set off a recession unless the Fed panics on oil prices and hikes rates, which could mow down millions of jobs. So as experts, for now, the war's biggest impact is oil prices, but if it keeps going, those cascade into growth, jobs, and inflation. If that happens, Trump could be throwing away his hard-earned boom just in time for midterm elections. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and go to petersanons.com for daily videos and in-depth articles with charts and all the gory details. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.